Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Scenes. We were just discussing that August air, which is, I don't, I feel like it's getting so tired to keep saying this, but how are we in August? How are we mid-August? It's so crazy. Um, anyway, it is a sunny day, which is always nice in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know why, what's it like for Mindy and Kamira? Huh? Did you guys, Jessica, can you send Melissa
Sorry,
the link? She says it's not working, hers.
oh, couldn't get off mute. Anyways, it is sunny here. It's a beautiful day in northern Michigan,
That's
actually.
great. How about you, Kamira? You're on mute.
It is overcast here. We're supposed to have afternoon showers, and actually, everyone in our house is happy about it because we're about tired of watering.
Okay, so good. So we'll wish for rain for you. So our topic today, which I think it's bigger than the college conversation. It's kind of like, how do we say goodbye to our kids, right? Like, and we, in my life, I found I said goodbye to my kids over and over again in small ways, and then college was the big one, but I was never good at it. It was always cause for tears for me. And I remember when my oldest went to overnight camp, and I cried so hard that someone called me afterwards to see if I was okay, which I didn't understand at all. Of course I'm crying. My kid just left for overnight camp. Like, what do you mean? Anyway, so college followed suit because apparently those transitions for me are really, really hard. And I did not make it easy for my kids to leave. I cried and cried and I was stressed and it's terrible. I don't recommend it. Probably could have started therapy a little earlier for their benefit, but they say goodbye fine to me. So I guess I didn't scar them too much. Anyway, so I'm going to pass it to Mindy, who I'm excited to hear from Mindy because we usually are point counterpoint. Let's see.
I was going to say, Sue, I don't know if you can see me shake my head. No, no, no. No, it's interesting. When my oldest was in first grade, we were moving several states away in the middle of the year, which I thought would be a great, I don't know, he'd go into a classroom, things would be great, it would be a smooth transition. So I hope I don't get choked up. I still, all these years later, get choked up. But I took him, we moved in, I took him to his new classroom. I had his two younger brothers with me. We get first grade, we get to the classroom door, and he looks at me and he says, "Mommy, don't make me go in there." And I'm like, oh my God, I got the two little ones. And then the teacher comes and she brings a little boy to come bring him in. And he just looks at me, goes, "Mommy, please don't make me go. Don't make me go." Oh my gosh. So, it was like, yeah, what was I going to say? Okay, Mom. So fast forward now to first year of college, and I'm having almost PTSD thinking, oh my God, what if he looks at me and says, "Please don't make me go in there. Please don't make me go in there." So, but I tried to keep it together because I felt I have to be strong. If I'm strong, they'll be strong. So, fortunately, I, a little bit of anxiety all going the way into that lead up to orientation. Luckily, and for all my boys, they were sports kids. So they had a ready-made group of people, and he was rooming with another swimmer. So we kind of left him there. They said they found out the girls' team was having a party for the boys' team that night. So, okay, off they went. So we met the next morning. We were going to take him to breakfast. And I was like, okay, as long as, he had something to do. We get there and he and his roommate, I'm like, "We'll take you guys to breakfast." They're like, "Well, the girls are making us." Fine, off they went. So it was so smooth. So I was like, "Let's go, get in the car, drive away now. Things are good. Let's get out of here." So that for me, it's sort of the unexpected. You just don't know. I was prepared for, "Mom, please don't let me go. Don't make me go in there." And I guess I prepared for the worst, and it all worked out. And for all three of my kids, really, that was a huge benefit to saying goodbye to them because it was still hard. And each one was different. My middle one, I don't know, he gave us a little bit of attitude. So I was like, fine, off we go. And then my youngest, he had a football thing. So I was really fortunate. But I guess my advice is prepare for the worst and be strong. I think we have to be strong for our kids. And if we're strong, I think they'll be strong. So that's my Monday.
So, Mindy,
Mhm.
so it's my fault.
Pretty much. Yeah. No, it is that's we're all different, right? And then the flip side is I didn't want them to think I wasn't gonna miss them. But I don't know. Just the way I went. Okay, I'm gonna turn it right down to, or throw it down, pass it down, since we're on sports, to Melissa, who looks half awake.
I am half awake. That's so funny. So I missed the beginning of this, but we're talking about sending our kids off to college. Is that what it is? Oh my gosh. It seems like a long time ago, and it really wasn't. I think when my oldest was going off to college, I was flashing back to my dad driving me to college for the very first time. Um, my first 2 years of college were 1,500 miles away from my house. And my dad and I had not been that close in high school, but he and I went on this road trip together, and we were side by side in the car, and we just had really wonderful bonding moments for 27 hours straight because we just drove the whole way through. Um, and when we finally got to our destination and my dad dropped me off, this like normally kind of stoic guy all of a sudden like could not keep the tears in. And I'm like getting teary-eyed thinking about it. But like that was a huge shift in our relationship because all of a sudden I saw him being vulnerable. And yeah, so that was like I thought something similar might happen when I dropped my daughter off, but I mean, I was a little teary-eyed, but I wasn't like that. And I think it's because I'm normally so expressive with her that it was like kind of, like fun and exciting. And we had already been through her being away for summers at camps and stuff. So we had a little bit of that, separation already. But I think it was just, I mean, this was, mind you, before COVID really struck. So both my husband and I got to go up to the room and check it out and see all the roommates and the whole situation, meet people in the hallway, just like look at everything a lot. So get her room ready. And I know there was like I didn't really want to leave the room. I was like, "Can I make your bed?" And she's like, "Mom, leave," like um but I think probably for parents during the pandemic, I mean, I don't know how it's going to be this year. It might be a little different. It might be a faster, like only one of you is allowed up there to help bring the stuff up, and the goodbyes are faster. So maybe it's like, back in preschool when the teachers were like, drop them off and leave. Like, don't drag it out, So I don't know. Maybe your transitions could be like easier now. I'm not really sure. But just tell them you love them and stay in touch and everyone will be fine. You'll get through it, I promise. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Kamara.
That was me catching the football, Mindy. How was college drop off? I will tell you at the end of the month because our youngest is going to his first year and we're going to do that at the end of the month. And it has been a while. It has been 11 years since we've had a first college drop off, and everything is different. For some of you who've been watching us know that our older sons are all older adoptees. So when they went to college, it was completely different. I mean, just the fact that they were going to college was big and celebratory, and everybody, they were amazed, and we're letting them know that you shouldn't be amazed. You should be here. With this one, we've had him since day one. His background is different. He has older brothers who went to school. Everybody is so excited for him. I know there'll be tears. There'll be happy tears. I have been preparing for this since December, since he got in and decided where he was going to go. We've talked about homesickness. I almost cried once when we talked about homesickness, and he said, "Yeah, it may happen because I'm not running away from anything." And I was like, we've even talked, and once he initiated the conversation about my life and things that I get to do now and stuff. So that made me feel really good too. Melissa, I don't know why you brought up your college drop off, because now it's making me think of mine. And I hadn't thought about that in the context of this and what it was like when my parents dropped me off so many years ago. But that was emotional. I could tell that my father was emotional when I went to Vassar, and Vassar is the only co-ed Seven Sisters school. And we get there and we're doing all the things, and my parents are doing all the things. My father and I are putting together the room because my mother's brand new sweatsuit could not get sweat in it. And I'm putting out the dorms, and I say to my father, "That's the all girls dorm. That's the women's dorm." And he's like, "Excuse me?" And I said, "That's the women's dorm, so that people can have a choice." And he's like, "I thought this was a women's college." And I was like, "Oh, wow." I mean, my parents were hands off in the process. They knew where I was applying and stuff. And I was like, he has like built this bubble around himself. And he was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Now I have to pay attention." So that was our fun. I'm sure I'm going to have a moment like that when we go in a couple of weeks. But he's ready. If you have a child that you have not dropped off yet, they are ready. They've probably been getting on your nerves all summer. That is nature's way of making it easy for everybody to separate. And if you haven't done drop off yet, like we haven't, that means that your student has been saying goodbye to friends all month, and it will be ready because your student's probably the last one. I know ours is he and another friend who's going to the same school. And so they will be pushing away by the time they get there. I don't think he's going to be able to shove us out of the door fast enough. But I don't know if it's all schools, Melissa, but our school has lifted the COVID restrictions for drop off so that we can, so whole families can go in and do the traditional pre-COVID drop off. So if your school has lifted the restrictions, you should feel comfortable with that. And I am coping. I am over preparing. That's how I cope for everything. I just over prepare. If you could see the piles of things I bought that he does not need, we have them. And now I have to figure out what to do with them. And over scheduling. I am going to visit friends while we're there, and it'll be fun. And he's got things to do, and we're all going to survive it just fine. And I will call and text him too much the first semester, and then he will tell me to stop. I'm going to send it over to Eka because I know she has good advice having done this twice.
Well, you'd think I would have good advice doing this twice, but no, as I have said many times on our Mondays about my oldest, by the time it was time to take her to college, we were almost like relieved, like, get out. You know what I mean? Like, it was really, as much I knew I was going to miss her because she basically is a huge presence in our family. I also knew that it was time to hand over the reins of her life to her, that it wasn't going to be my responsibility anymore to make sure her homework was done. She was getting up on time. That was no longer my responsibility, even though it should have never been, but you still kind of do it, So it was exciting because she was really excited. She wanted to get out of our house. But it was like the sense of relief that this is no longer my responsibility. And obviously we had said, you're off to college, but you could always come home. And actually I did really well with, the whole thing, because I knew she was going to come home at Thanksgiving. I knew she was going to come home at Christmas, and a couple spring breaks she came home, and she came home at the summer and worked. And so we knew we were going to see her. But actually the hardest thing for me was after she graduated from college, and we went to graduation, and she got a new job. So we moved into her new place, and, this whirlwind, we flew home. I'm doing laundry, and all of a sudden I just had a meltdown completely. And I went outside, and I was like sobbing hysterically. My husband said, "What's happening?" I was like, "She's never coming home. Like, she's not coming home." And that's when I think it really hit me. So that was like years later. So the college thing wasn't hard. It was after she graduated, she's not going to spend a month at my house at Christmas anymore. She's not going to spend 3 months at my house in the summer. And that's the part where I had issues. But college was fun. She was so excited. How can you not be excited? And then one of the things I had heard is don't text them first or call first. Let them be the one to reach out.
And it was within half an hour, she texted us and said, I'm all moved in. Everything's ready. I met my roommates. It's all good. And then I was allowed to text her. So that was really good. So now we get to hear about Jess and her move in.
I'll just say maybe as the person who never remembers to text anybody, I don't know if that's necessarily the best policy. I'm trying to think, like, so I am the middle child, but I'm also the only daughter. So I'm like thinking back, I'm like, there's no way my mom didn't cry, but I don't think I remember her crying in front of me. I just can't remember if she cried for any of us, but like she's a crier, so she had to have, right? I do remember I wasn't exactly sad. I was more nervous and anxious to try to figure out how to, make things happen. I do remember my parents being like, oh, we forgot to know where the package center is. Do you want you and your new roommate to hop in the back of our car and we just drive you over to where like you will be getting your mail? And I was like, sure. And it was deeply awkward. And my roommate, who I still am in touch with and still close friends, also just, I think fairly recently was like, hey, do you remember that time your parents like drove us to the mail center? That was really awkward, right? I was like, yeah, it was. But no, I feel like I had actually a harder time saying goodbye to my high school friends than I did to my family, and kind of in part because like, I'm gonna be back for Thanksgiving. I'm gonna be back for all of the breaks, and like my mom is going to call me once a week whether I want her to or not. So like there's no way I'm not gonna stay in touch with them. But I think at the time, high school friends were a little bit more up in the air. But also I think my school life is different from when my parents were in school, because they had to, make long distance calls in order to stay in touch with their high school friends. And I had Skype at the time, and I get through all 4 years of college, and I'm like, I'm still best friends with like my high school best friends. So like, I don't think that was nearly as big of a worry as I thought it was going to be. But yeah,
Okay,
I remember it going smoothly, and my parents bouncing after the deeply awkward drive to the package center.
Okay, we're going to share Lori's comment, which I think right now, if your kids aren't in school, it's such a lovely thing. And if you didn't do it this year, you could do it next year. But the idea of doing something at the end of the summer, and which Lori says they did since he was in elementary school, helped them transition from summer to the next stage, whatever that might be. So Lori, great idea. Thanks so much. I want to tell you that when my fifth left for college, because it was the baby and it was hard for us, we'd been a marriage of 3 for quite a few years. And we get to the college dorm, and there weren't many people moving in that day. I can't remember if we got permission to move in early. I don't know why we were there and there were so few people. But my kid was a little anxious. And so, like a good mother, I saw a boy alone in his room and thought, I'm going to help the two of them. Those two boys never talked for the whole year. They were so, first of all, mine was embarrassed. The other one was horrified. They probably spent a year avoiding eye contact. So my suggestion, let them just be lonely.
So, go ahead.
What?
I just want to add something about dads, but finish your suggestion.
No, go.
I was just going to say, we're talking all about us except for a couple of our dads. And I just want to say, I do remember driving home with my husband was so quiet for so long. And finally he said, he just felt he never had the opportunity to tell them all the things he wanted to tell them. And then I was pulling into my driveway, just, after dropping my kid off at some point, and I see my neighbor, a dad, and he's out for a walk, and I stop and, hey, how'd it go? How'd drop off go? And I did not know this man well, but he was a neighbor. Oh my gosh, he starts crying, and he was a big guy, and he starts crying. He's like, I'm so sorry. It was just, and it's a great reminder for us and anyone listening. Dads have a hard time too. Like, I think, we all expect moms. So Kamira, you're going, watch your hubby, because, they don't say a lot all the time, but they have a hard time too. So that's fine.
Well, Dan is the crier in our family. So there is no anything where Dan isn't crying. Like, even the reminder of a moment of tenderness will have Dan crying. So everyone knows Dan's going to cry.
I
I
love
want
it.
to point out that one of the things that experts are talking about now, because parents have become so much more involved in their kids' transitions in life, the schools have adapted to that and they have like orientation for parents. They do all these things for parents. But the worst thing is when the parents stay in a hotel to help their kid transition and they'll say, like, let's meet up for breakfast tomorrow. And do you want to have dinner with us tomorrow night? And everyone is on the same vulnerable page for that first week when they get dropped off. And if you miss it, people are already forming their best friendships. Your kid needs to be uncomfortable. They need to be alone and figuring out how to get in. So extending that stay and being their crutch doesn't service them well. And I think we had that when we were kids. Like our parents dropped us off and they just got in the car and left. And those are my best friends. I met people who were crying, who we sat together and cried. And, so there's something about being vulnerable at the same time and not taking your kids out of that. I also want to say this coming Thursday, because enough people have asked us, how do you say goodbye to your kids? We have Ronnie Cohen-Sandler coming back on to talk about the best ways to transition and help your kids transition, but also like, how do you deal with the emotions as a parent to say goodbye, let them move on and all of those things. And then one other question, which is so interesting, how do you help the kids, the siblings who are at home? Because sometimes the siblings are having a hard time too. So 10:30 Thursday morning. And then Kamira has tomorrow. Who do you have coming on?
Well, it's college all week. Tomorrow we have Josh Stern. He's the vice president of student services and dean of students at a university. And I would say the name, except I don't have my glasses on and I know I'm going to mispronounce it without my glasses. But we are going to talk about being an effective advocate for your college bound teen, your college freshman. And specifically, what are your legal rights? What should you back off from? What should you stop doing in preparation for this? Or if you don't have time to prepare because you're dropping off this week, what you need to know that you need to not do, and whether you put a rubber band on your arm and stuff every time you want to do it. So this is a timely thing. The relationship changes, and some of our kids are 18 when we're dropping them off. So there are some legal things that you may want to do in anticipation of that, especially if they're going far from you. The parent orientations that are happening these days, I think if you're dropping off and your school has one, please try to make it. We did 2 college drop-offs at Morehouse College, which has a famous, they do a pre-orientation. They do an orientation for all of their students. It's a whole thing. There are different ceremonies. It's beautiful. And at the very end, they have a parent ceremony. It's a send-off ceremony that is beautiful. And it is also your message. You need to go. This is it. We have provided you with this wonderful, beautiful memory. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you get your own graduation ceremony and then leave.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about college a lot this week, but I will say that this advice is good to have in advance because it gets you thinking about how do you want to be when you say goodbye. And to Kamira's point, some of these things in terms of backing away and letting our kids take over, they're good to do earlier than the week you're leaving for college. So if you have younger kids, there's plenty of information coming out here that you'll say thank you to hearing in advance. So everyone, thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next Monday.